She found a mysterious calabash floating in the river, but when she took it, the whispers began. What happened next will shock you. African folktale. Before we begin this spine-chilling African folktale, take a moment to like this video, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a story filled with mystery, suspense, and deep wisdom. The village of Nyamekye lay nestled between ancient baobab trees, where whispers of forgotten tales drifted through the wind like unseen spirits. At its heart sat Nana Isha, the oldest woman in the village, her eyes clouded with time yet sharp with wisdom. One evening, as the sun bled into the horizon, Adia, a curious 17-year-old girl, walked past Nana Isha's hut. The old woman, seated on a low stool, weaving intricate patterns into a basket, suddenly called out, "Child, beware of what the river keeps." Her voice, raspy yet firm, sent a shiver down Adia's spine. Adia hesitated. "What do you mean?" she asked. Nana Isha's gaze darkened. "Some things are not meant to be taken, lest they take something from you." Adia laughed nervously, brushing it off, but the old woman only sighed, staring toward the forbidden river, where shadows already stirred. Adia had always been drawn to the forbidden river at the edge of Nyamekye. The elders warned children to stay away, whispering that it was a place of forgotten spirits and restless souls. But to Adia, the warnings only fueled her curiosity. One afternoon, when the village bustled with preparations for the harvest festival, Adia slipped away. She followed a narrow path through the dense forest, where the trees grew so tall they blocked the sky. The air smelled of damp earth and wild jasmine, and the only sounds were the distant calls of unseen birds. As she pushed through the thick undergrowth, she finally reached the river's edge. The water, dark and still, reflected the sky like a polished mirror. A strange silence hung over the place, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. Adia knelt, dipping her fingers into the cool water, but as she did, a faint ripple spread across the surface. Though no wind blew, a shiver crawled down her spine. Something about this place felt wrong. As Adia gazed into the still water, something unusual drifted toward her. At first, she thought it was just a piece of wood carried by the river's slow current. But as it neared, she saw it clearly, a calabash bobbing gently on the surface, spinning as if guided by an unseen force. The calabash was unlike any she had seen before. Its surface was carved with strange, intricate patterns, symbols that seemed almost alive, shifting under the golden light of the setting sun. A faint humming sound filled the air, so soft it could have been the wind, or something else entirely. Curiosity overpowered caution. She leaned forward, reaching out. As her fingers brushed against the smooth surface, a sudden chill shot through her body, making her gasp. For a moment, the river went utterly silent. No rustling leaves, no chirping birds, just a vast, hollow stillness. Then a whisper, low and breathy, like a voice carried on the wind. "Return me, or suffer the fate of the forgotten." Adia's breath caught in her throat. Had she really heard that? Or was it just her imagination? Adia froze, her heart pounding in her chest. The whisper had been faint, almost like the wind passing through the trees, yet it felt as if it had been spoken directly into her ear. She spun around, scanning the dense forest behind her. Nothing. The trees stood still, the river silent once more. Her fingers tightened around the calabash, its carvings warm against her skin despite the evening chill. She swallowed hard. "It's just my mind playing tricks on me," she assured herself. "The elders love their ghost stories." Still, an uneasy feeling gnawed at her. As she stood, she glanced at the water, expecting to see only her own reflection. Instead, for the briefest moment, another face stared back at her, hollow-eyed, mouth moving soundlessly beneath the rippling surface. A gasp escaped her lips, and she stumbled backward. When she looked again, the vision was gone. Clutching the calabash tightly, she turned and hurried back toward the village. She wouldn't tell anyone, not yet. But as she walked away, the wind carried another whisper. "You should not have taken it." By the time Adia reached the village, the sun had dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in deep hues of purple and crimson. The evening fires flickered as families gathered for their meals, laughter and chatter filling the air. Yet as Adia walked through the village, clutching the calabash tightly, an uneasy stillness seemed to follow her. She stepped into her mother's hut, expecting warmth and familiarity. But the moment Mama Nonkem laid eyes on the calabash, her smile vanished. Her hands, worn from years of work, trembled as she pointed at it. "Where did you find that?" her mother asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Adia hesitated. "By the river," she admitted, her voice smaller than she intended. Her mother's face turned ashen, her eyes dark with fear. "Adia, no. You must return it. Now." Adia frowned. "Why? It's just a calabash." Before Mama Nonkem could answer, a sudden gust of wind howled through the hut, knocking over a clay pot. In the distance, the village drums stopped, mid-beat, and somewhere faint but clear, the whisper came again. That night, Adia lay on her sleeping mat, staring at the calabash beside her. The strange symbols on its surface seemed darker now, almost deeper, as though they had been etched into its very soul. Sleep did not come easily. The hut was quiet, yet the air felt thick, heavy, unnatural. The wind outside carried distant murmurs, like voices just beyond hearing. Then, tap, tap, tap. A soft knocking sound echoed inside the hut. Adia bolted upright, her breath shallow. The sound was coming from the calabash. She swallowed, hesitating before slowly reaching out. But the moment her fingers brushed against it, the whisper returned. "You should not have taken it," Adia yelped, pulling her hand away. She turned to wake her mother, but Mama Nkem was fast asleep, undisturbed. The air grew colder. Shadows stretched unnaturally across the hut. Adia grabbed the calabash and shoved it under her mat, her heart hammering. She forced her eyes shut, but the whispers did not stop. That night, the village dogs howled, a warning only the spirits understood. By sunrise, Adia had barely slept. Dark circles framed her tired eyes as she clutched the calabash, determined to keep it hidden. But the village was already stirring with unease. The dogs had howled all night, and the morning air felt heavier than usual, thick with something unseen. Before Adia could slip away, a messenger arrived at her hut. "The elders summon you," he said grimly. The village elders rarely called for someone unless it was serious. Adia felt her chest tighten as she followed the messenger to the great baobab tree, where the council sat in a circle, their faces carved with deep concern. Baba Ekene, the oldest among them, leaned forward. "Child, we know what you have taken." Adia swallowed. "It's just a calabash," the elders murmured among themselves. "No," Baba Ekene said, his voice like distant thunder. "It is a vessel of the spirits, and you have disturbed its slumber." Adia's hands trembled as the whisper returned, soft, insistent, growing louder. "Return me before it is too late." That night, Adia lay awake, gripping her blanket tightly. The elder's words echoed in her mind. "You have disturbed its slumber." But despite their warnings, no one could explain what the calabash truly was. Outside, the village was silent. Even the insects that usually sang through the night had gone quiet. The air was too still, as if the world itself was waiting. Then a whisper, "Return me before it is too late." Adia's breath hitched. The voice was no longer a distant murmur. It was right next to her ear. Her heart pounded as she turned her head. There, at the foot of her sleeping mat, lay the calabash, even though she had hidden it beneath a pile of cloth before bed. A sudden gust of wind rushed through the hut, snuffing out the oil lamp. Darkness swallowed the room. And then from inside the calabash, a hollow knock. Tap, tap, tap. Adia's blood ran cold. She wasn't imagining this. Something was inside, and it wanted out. Morning came, but something was wrong. As Adia stepped outside her hut, the village seemed strangely quiet. The usual sounds, goats bleating, children laughing, the rhythmic pounding of grain, felt muted, as if the world had lost its voice. Then a gasp. Mama Nakem dropped the basket she was carrying, eyes wide in horror. Other villagers turned, their faces etched with fear. Adia frowned. "What is it?" she asked, looking down at herself. And then she saw it, or rather, she didn't. The ground beneath her feet was empty. No shadow stretched behind her, no dark outline cast by the morning sun. It was as if she no longer belonged to the world. A cold dread gripped her. She turned frantically, lifting her hands to the light. Nothing. Baba Ekene's voice, heavy with sorrow, broke the silence. "She has been marked," he whispered. "The spirits are taking her." Adia's breath hitched. The whispers returned, louder now. "You should not have taken it. You should not have taken it." And deep inside the calabash, something stirred. Shaken, Adia ran through the village, her chest tight with fear. The villagers whispered, their eyes filled with both pity and dread. No one who had lost their shadow had ever returned unchanged. She had only one place left to go, Nana Isha's hut. The old woman sat outside, chewing on bitter cola, as if she had been waiting. Her weathered face showed no surprise as Adia collapsed before her, breathless. "Nana, please tell me what's happening," Adia pleaded, gripping the woman's hands. Nana Isha sighed, staring toward the river. "You have taken what was never meant to be touched. The calabash belongs to the spirits." Adia shuddered. "Then I'll return it, right now." But Nana Isha shook her head. "It is no longer that simple, child. The spirits do not only want what is theirs, they want to know, what will you give in return?" Adia felt her blood run cold. The whispers grew louder, twisting around her like invisible hands. "Return me, or be forgotten forever." Determined, Adia clutched the calabash tightly and ran toward the river. The whispers were louder now, like voices carried by the wind, circling her ears. The sky, once clear, had darkened unnaturally. Clouds swirled thick and heavy, as if the heavens themselves were watching. When she reached the riverbank, the once still water had turned violent, churning as if something beneath was stirring awake. The moment Adia stepped forward, the wind howled, a scream not of nature, but of something ancient and enraged. She hesitated, heart pounding. Could she just throw it back? Would that be enough? Then the ground trembled beneath her feet. A shape rose from the river, a towering figure with eyes like molten gold, its flowing robes made of water itself. Adia gasped, stepping back. The entity's voice boomed deep and echoing. "You have taken what was never yours." The calabash shook violently in her hands as if trying to break free. Adia's throat went dry. She had awakened the river mother, and she was furious. Adia stood frozen as the river mother loomed before her, towering like the waves themselves. Her flowing form shimmered with rippling water, her golden eyes burning with ancient rage. The air crackled with unseen energy, making Adia's skin tingle. "You have taken what was not yours," the spirit's voice thundered, sending a deep vibration through the ground. Now a debt must be paid. Adia clutched the calabash, her heart racing. I didn't mean to steal it. I just found it," she stammered. The river mother's expression did not soften. The river does not lose its own. What was taken must be returned, but balance must also be restored. Adia swallowed hard. "What do you want from me?" A powerful silence fell over the river. Then the spirit spoke. "To return what is mine, you must offer something of equal value." Adia's blood ran cold. Equal value? Her mind spun. What could she possibly give? The wind whispered around her, and deep within the calabash, something began to stir, waiting for her choice. Adia's mind raced. Something of equal value? What could she offer that would satisfy the river mother? The spirit watched her, unblinking, as if peering into the depths of her soul. The calabash trembled in her hands, its carvings now pulsing with a faint, eerie glow. Adia thought of all she had, her home, her family, her memories. But what was enough? Then her fingers brushed against the necklace hanging from her neck. A simple pendant, worn smooth by time. It had once belonged to her father, the only thing she had left of him. Her breath hitched. Could she give it up? The wind howled around her, whispers growing urgent. The river mother extended a flowing hand. Decide, child. What will you give? Tears burned in Adia's eyes. Slowly, with trembling hands, she unclasped the necklace and placed it inside the calabash. The moment it touched the hollow inside, a deep silence fell. The river, the wind, the whispers, everything stopped. Then the calabash began to sink. Adia watched, her heart pounding, as the calabash slowly sank beneath the surface of the river. The water, once violent and restless, stilled instantly, as if the river itself had drawn a deep breath. The howling wind ceased, leaving behind an eerie, unnatural silence. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the river mother raised her hands, and the water glowed with a soft, golden light. Ripples spread outward, and where the calabash had disappeared, the water parted, revealing the necklace, floating atop the surface. Adia gasped. The pendant, once dull with age, now shimmered with an ethereal glow. The river mother's voice rang out, softer this time. You have given what you cherish most. Proving your heart is unselfish. The balance is restored. Adia hesitated before reaching out. The moment her fingers touched the necklace, a warm sensation spread through her chest. As she looked down, her shadow stretched beneath her once more. She had passed the test. The river had accepted her offering. And just as suddenly as she had appeared, the river mother vanished into the depths. Adia stood at the riverbank, her breath shaky as she clutched the glowing necklace. The cold weight of fear lifted from her chest, replaced by something unfamiliar, relief, awe, and gratitude. Slowly, she looked down. Her shadow stretched across the damp earth, long and dark beneath the moon's light. Her fingers trembled as she moved her hands, testing it. The shadow followed, just as it should. Tears welled in her eyes. She had been claimed by the spirits, but now she was returned. The river, once restless, was calm again. The whispers had faded, replaced by the soothing sounds of flowing water. Even the wind carried a gentler tune, as if the spirits were finally at peace. She turned to leave, but something made her stop. The calabash, now empty, floated back to the surface, perfectly still. The symbols, once pulsing with energy, had gone dark. A final gift from the river mother? A warning? Adia didn't know, but she did know one thing. She would never take what wasn't hers again. With the glowing pendant in hand, she walked back toward the village. As Adia stepped back into the village, the familiar sounds of life returned. The rhythmic pounding of grain, the crackling of fires, and the distant laughter of children. But the moment the villagers saw her, everything stopped. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Mamenkem rushed forward, her eyes wide with both fear and relief. "Adia," she whispered, hesitant, as if unsure if her daughter had truly returned. Adia nodded, lifting her hand to reveal the glowing pendant. The elders pushed through the crowd, their faces unreadable. Baba Ekene studied her carefully before murmuring, "The river has spared you." Whispers spread like wildfire. "She went to the river, mother, and lived. Her shadow is back. She has been chosen." Nana Isha only smiled, nodding knowingly. She has learned what many do not. Balance must always be kept. The villagers, once fearful, now looked at Adia with awe and respect. She had not just survived. She had returned, changed. And deep in her heart, Adia knew. The spirits were still watching. Some lessons were never meant to be forgotten. Days passed, but the village never looked at Adia the same way again. Where once she had been just another curious girl, she was now seen as something more, the one who had faced the river mother and lived. Children whispered about her in hushed tones. The elders watched her with silent respect. Even those who had feared her shadowless form now greeted her with awe and reverence. But Adia had changed too. She no longer feared the river. Instead, she understood it. She spent her evenings by its banks, listening, not just to the water, but to the stories it carried, the ones only those who had touched the spirit world could hear. It was Nana Ish who finally spoke the truth aloud. "The river does not forget, child. It chose you. You are its keeper now." Adia did not protest. She had taken from the river once, but now she would protect it. She would ensure no one else made the same mistake. And so the girl who once stole from the river became its guardian, its storyteller, its voice. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Adia found herself once again at Nana Isha's hut. The old woman sat on her wooden stool, weaving a basket, her fingers slow but steady. She did not look up when Adia approached. She had been expecting her. "So, child," Nana Isha said, her voice calm, "have you learned?" Adia knelt beside her, fingers tracing the glowing pendant at her chest. "I have." Nana Isha nodded, finally meeting Adia's gaze. "The river never takes without giving. It never gives without taking. Now you understand what the elders have always known. Balance is life." Adia sighed, glancing toward the distant river. "Will the whispers ever stop?" The old woman chuckled softly, shaking her head. "No, child, but now you will know how to listen." The wind stirred, carrying a faint whisper from the river's edge. This time it was not a warning. It was a greeting. Adia smiled. She was no longer afraid. Some stories, she realized, never truly end. The story of Adia and the whispering Calabash spread far beyond the village of Nyamekye. It was whispered among traders, retold by wandering griots, and carried to distant lands where fires burned under moonlit skies. It became more than just a tale. It became a warning. Never take what is not yours. Never disturb what you do not understand. And above all, remember, balance must always be kept. Some claimed the River Mother was merely a spirit punishing the reckless. Others believed she was a guardian, testing those who dared to cross into the world of the unseen. But the elders of Niyamekye knew the truth. The river does not forget. The river does not forgive. It simply waits. And so, each year, when the moon was high, the villagers gathered at the river bank, offering gifts, not to beg, not to plead, but to honor. For they knew that somewhere, beneath the still water, the spirits still whispered, and if you listened carefully, you could hear them say, "The debt has been paid for now." Years passed, and Adia grew into a woman of wisdom, respected as the guardian of the river. Yet, no matter how much time passed, the whispers never truly vanished. On certain nights when the moon was full and the air was thick with mist, villagers swore they heard soft voices drifting from the river's edge. Some claimed they saw a calabash floating on the surface, spinning slowly as if waiting to be claimed. But no one dared touch it. Mothers warned their children. Elders told the tale by firelight. And the people of Niyamekye never forgot. One evening, as Adia stood by the water, a young girl approached her. "What happens if someone takes it again?" she asked, eyes wide with curiosity. Adia smiled softly, though her gaze remained on the river. "Then the river will decide again," she said, "and the balance will shift once more." The wind stirred, carrying a familiar whisper across the water. "Return me, or suffer the fate of the forgotten." And somewhere, unseen, the spirits watched, waiting.